What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and we're here to continue our 10-part series on camp battles, position battles, to look out for, getting you guys prepped, because offseason is done. It is over. It is now training camp preseason. So it's time to talk about and project into the future, predict the future of each position group and what it'll end up being. So today, our episode is on the wide receivers. But before we get into it, take a second, hit the subscribe button, give us a like, put all your comments below. Make sure you turn on your notifications. If you guys are new to the channel, of course, we do all things, everything Raven, Baltimore Ravens here. So Glenn, wide receivers, I think, as we've done this before in the past, I think it's always good to start with some context. So why don't we list out the guys that we have on the roster right now, and then maybe talk about historically how many we've kept in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So they currently have 12 wide receivers listed on the roster.
Not
12.
10, not 11, 12.
12. That's a lot of competition heading into training camp. And so those 12 are second-year receiver Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, rookie Slade Bolden, Alabama, rookie Shamar Bridges. Let's see, Trayvon Clark, rookie out of Cal, Devin Duvernay. He's in his third year out of Texas. Jalen Moore in his second year out of Tennessee Martin. Makai Polk, rookie out of Mississippi State. James Prochet in his third year out of SMU. Benjamin Victor in his second year out of Ohio State. Tylan Wallace coming into his, I believe, is this his third year? Is that right? Or is this his
second year?
Second year, okay.
Second year. Yeah.
Oklahoma State. And then we got a couple other rookies, Raleigh Webb from the Citadel and rookie Devon Williams out of Oregon. So quite a crowded room. Not surprisingly, this is a position that most teams will come into camp pretty heavy because, of course, you need a lot of receivers to run, all those routes out there. It's going to be hot. And you need as many bodies in that room as possible. But Jimbo, they don't, they got 12, so there's going to be an awful lot of guys fighting for not a ton of available positions. So just to give you some context on how many they've kept in years past, in 2019, the Ravens kept 6 receivers on the roster. In 2020, they kept another 6 receivers on the roster. But last year, that number dipped down to just 5 receivers on the active or on the roster period throughout the year. So looks like it's going to be either 6 or 5, unless you're telling me there's going to be a kind of they're going to veer off what they usually do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be interesting because if you got 12, you're talking about 6 or 5. And I want to just go out there on a limb, maybe not too much of a limb, but I would be surprised if they went with 6. I think the reason is because of the depth we have in the tight end room. It's funny because a lot of people will call it parallel thinking, and that's fine. But I like to give ourselves some credit here, Glenn, because I think we were the first ones before any other media members. I'm not throwing shade here or anything like that, but I'm just mentioning the facts. Decided to talk about how the Ravens are finding a loophole, if you will, or fleecing the NFL as far as using more tight ends because their value in the league is lesser than that of wide receiver. So they're just using these guys' labels at tight end, knowing that they're just pass catchers that are getting paid like half. Yep. All that being said, the Baltimore Ravens drafted 2. They got 2 on the roster that are like locks to make the team, aside from the fringe guys. And then you got a guy like Patrick Ricard. So that room is full, a lot deeper, probably the deepest room in the NFL. With that in mind, as far as number of bodies, but with that in mind, I think that 5 is the max for wide receivers. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, it definitely looks like the emphasis is being made on the middle of the field and using pass catchers and not necessarily wide receivers. And it's kind of like the old DB versus corner or safety. And they're kind of flipping the script in that regard as well by getting all these safeties who can also play corner and can be really moved all around the field defensively. I think they're going to do the same thing with these tight ends. They're going to use them in many different roles of pass catching. They'll be doing some tight end work, but they'll be doing quite a bit of wide receiver work as well, especially guys like Likely, Mark Andrews, and even to some extent Charlie Kohler. So I agree with you. I think they go light at wide receiver, and because that's not the emphasis they're putting on the offense. And it's not like we unprecedented to go for 5. They went for 5 last year. So, yeah, I agree. So you're talking 12 guys fighting for 5 jobs. And let's be honest, there's some stone cold locks already at the top of this 5. And I think we should get into them now. So Jimbo, how many and who are those gentlemen that you say are stone cold absolute locks to make this roster?
This is interesting to me because I feel like we always have the same locks, but I mentioned mine before, and I think one of them you kind of perked your ears up, but I never got a response from you. So I'm glad the cameras are on now. So Rashad Bateman, obviously a lock to make this team. Devin Duvernay, the all-pro kick returner, punt returner, special teams guy, a lock to make this team, looking to make a big jump this year. Tylan Wallace, I also think is a lock to make this team. But another one that I think is a lock to make this team, and the Ravens are going to be depending on heavily, is James Prochet. The Twitterverse is all over the spectrum when it comes to James Prochet, and he's certainly shown the willingness to get in there and work hard and do the dirty work to get it done, come in early, stay late, and things like that. But we're in a position, I think, as the Ravens to where he's a lock, and we're betting on him along with Tylan Wallace and these other young guys. And we've made it kind of so you have to, unless he gets extremely outplayed by some of these undrafted guys. And it would have to be a mighty, discrepancy in training camp because they're so new. So I think those 4 are locks. I'm pretty sure you agree with me on the first 3. Do you agree with me on the James Prochet lock?
Yeah, I you know what? James Prochet to me wasn't, and this may be surprising to people, he wasn't a stone cold lock until the Hollywood Brown trade for me.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think with Hollywood here, he was right on that fringe at 5. And I think he would have been competing for all, with all these young guys to hold on to that spot. But I think with Marquise now gone, that's a big guy that you remove from the top of the depth chart. And I think James Prochet, like you mentioned, with the work ethic and the fact that he has experience and has been in the system for a few years gives him the leg up and his positional versatility, and that he's shown he can be a punt returner. And I'm sure in a pinch they could put him back at kick return, although I don't think we've seen that to this point. So yeah, I agree. He's a stone cold lock. And unless, like you mentioned, there'd be some crazy way where he's just incredibly outplayed. And I don't anticipate that being the case either. Mm-hmm. So there's one spot, according to me and you, remaining, and unless, and of course, there's always the caveat, unless there's a rash of injuries, say to the tight end position, that may cause them to then turn back to the wide receiver position if need be. But as long as everyone remains relatively healthy, that's one spot remaining. And I gotta say, there's a pretty glaring weakness when you talk about who's already on this team as far as a lock in your mind and what's missing. Rashad Bateman right now is the biggest guy you have as a lock at 6'1", 193 is how he's listed on ESPN. And then you got Duvernay at 5'11". You got James Prochet at 5'11". I think that's maybe generous.
Stretch.
Yeah, he looks smaller than Devin Duvernay to me, but I could be wrong there. And then Tylan Wallace.
Too much taller than me, dude.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I'm not so sure about it. But either way, and then Tylan Wallace also 5'11". So you're talking about 3 5'11" guys, and then Rashad Bateman at 6'1". So do you see a guy, let me go over some of these other guys on this list, like Shamar Bridges.
This is where I'm torn. Go ahead. Sorry, but this is exactly where I'm torn.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking Shamar Bridges is 6'4", 207. Trayvon Clark, 6'3", 193. Let's see, Makai Polk, who's been getting a ton, and I really want to spend a couple seconds talking about him in a moment. Makai Polk, 6'3", 197. Benjamin Victor, a guy who I think might be kind of getting lost a little bit here, but he's been around, and he's a guy that the Ravens signed to that futures deal, so they obviously thought something of him. He's 6'4", 199.
How can he be 6'4", 199? That still blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the thickest gentleman out
blows
there.
My
mind. 6'4", 199. That's awfully thin. Devon Williams out of Oregon, a guy again getting a ton of height from especially some of our listeners here. 6'5", 211, and Raleigh Webb 6'2", 204. So do you look at
Did
those
you name
guys?
Jalen Moore? Did I miss that?
Jalen Moore's 5'11". I didn't name him because he's only
he's the shorter guy.
5'11".
Okay,
Yeah. So Slade Bolden,
I see what you're saying.
Jalen Moore.
Right.
There's other smaller guys, but do you
Right.
think that it's a bit of an uphill climb for guys like Jalen Moore and Slade Bolden because there's already so many 5'11" and shorter guys that are locks on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. That's going to be the issue. The one thing, there's a few things the Ravens will have to figure out, and I know you and I kind of disagree on this. I think in that I honestly think that there's a chance that Duvernay's snaps go down at kick return, punt returner, and he turns his focus to, being a traditional wide receiver, if you will, and maybe then putting him back there in spots. So that could be an opportunity for a guy like Slade Bolden to come in. And to offload some of those responsibilities to him. So while he's shorter, that could be, his diversity, yeah, as a player and as a playmaker, the ability they're able to use him in different ways could be to his advantage. But other than that, you're absolutely right. It's going to be a serious uphill battle. And I was thinking about my lock or my fifth guy, definitely not a lock. And I like Benjamin Victor a lot. The thing I don't like about Victor, Glenn, that I struggle with is when I watched when we went to camp, he's a long strider, which is fine, but he is slow out of his breaks, in my opinion. He just looked slow and looked like he had, his route tree development was immature. Maybe it was just a bad day.
Well, this is also a year ago.
Yeah, so hopefully those things have changed, but his body is there. The Ravens obviously like him, and like you said, he brings something to the team that they don't have. So, and then the other thing you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it Jalen Moore last year that got injured, but was kind of lighting things up at the very beginning?
Yeah,
then he got hurt. So I'm stuck because I think it comes down to one of those two. I think Slade Bolden is. I think it comes down to one of those two, or who's the kid that you mentioned? Hold on 1 second. Yeah. So those are the three that it comes down to for me. As you narrow this down, are there any names that you take off this list?
Well, I think there's a name. I'm surprised I didn't see him on here, and it just hit me that I had a note written down on this guy. I thought the Ravens were giving a shot to a USFL receiver, Jonathan.
He's like 6'4", right?
Well,
I think he's been linked to the Ravens. It's not official yet, is it?
I thought that they gave him a camp invite after OTAs.
Okay.
Let me see here. I'm just trying to find, because if I remember correctly, he was also like a track star and he was super, super fast. So maybe there's another guy that we should be adding to this list.
Is it Jonathan Adams?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's him. And he played in USFL, and then here we go. Yeah, the Ravens apparently have signed him to they're giving him a shot, a training camp shot. And you could look more into that, but I think we should at least bring him up because of the fact that if they're bringing him to the camp, then he's got just as good a shot as Shamar Bridges, as Trayvon Clark, any of these rookies who are trying to make a name. So I just wanted to give him a little bit of respect there.
And he's a big body guy who's also fast.
There you go. So let's not sleep on him, either, because I think really any of these guys, that's what's really cool about this position, is that any of these guys could go and take it, and they're all going to get a ton of opportunities in training camp, but most importantly in preseason to make a name, because I don't think we're going to see a ton of Rashad Bateman or Devin Duvernay in the preseason, but we may see, we're going to see a ton of Devon Williams and Makai Polk, and early when OTAs were going down, and even on the mini camp, Makai Polk's name was popping up every day in the OTAs. Every day, the guy was making plays left and right. We kept hearing about, man, who is that? Who's that? Who's that 18? Who's that? And he just kept popping up. And then Devon Williams, another guy, big guy, and I kept hearing his name at least in the early stages of the OTAs. But Makai Polk was a guy I heard throughout the entire offseason program so far. So, man, I think they got the early leg. But Benjamin Victor, I don't want to count him out, because they gave this guy that futures deal, and he's been working. We saw him, I think, in one of the videos. He was with Lamar Jackson doing some training. Let's not sleep on Benjamin Victor either.
Definitely.
But this is 7 guys fighting for one spot. That's intense, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, the decision I think that will be made will be Benjamin Victor, while I just kind of talked about the things I didn't like about his game. Like you mentioned, it's a year ago. He knows there's a few things, of course. He knows the organization. They invested in him to a certain extent, and want to see what he has. And so he has an advantage in that this isn't his first training camp. All this isn't drinking through a fire hose for a young guy like a lot of these rookies, like it will be for a lot of these rookies and is every day at this point. So
Hey, let me ask you one other quick question, Jimbo. What if we talked about how Eric has been having these contingency plans built around virtually every position?
Yep.
When I look at the receiver position after the Hollywood Brown trade, if I say to you in the second or third day of training camp, knock on wood, Rashad Bateman goes down with a hamstring injury, and it's one of those, we don't know when he'll be back. We're hopeful it's minor, but we don't know. What's the contingency plan if Rashad Bateman is to miss time? And is it possible that the fifth receiver isn't on this list right now, and he's going to be coming from another team?
It's very possible. It'll be interesting to see. The Ravens haven't made a move, and that means that they have some trust in these guys, because coming out of minicamp, you would have thought, where's their confidence level depending on the moves that they make between now and training camp.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not upon us yet. We still got time, so they could be waiting. But I don't see a real contingency plan here other than trying to go after a vet that is on the market. I really have no idea what they do here. But the one thing I will say, I'm on the band. People have been on this bandwagon for a long time, and I've been back and forth. But I think Devin Duvernay will have a huge role in the offense this year. He's not going to be sprinkled in as a gadget guy. I think this dude gets serious reps. He could, it's possible. I don't know, but it is reasonable, and you could have an argument depending on their usage of him that he could get more balls his way than maybe a Rashad Bateman, not a Mark Andrews, maybe a Rashad Bateman, simply because I think he'll get more short stuff to then just get the ball in his hands. So I think that while there's not a clear contingency plan, I think that Devin Duvernay is going to surprise a lot of people in his ability and impact he has on every single game. So that maybe I'm leaning on that to make me less nervous.
Yeah.
If Rashad goes down,
let's just hope he don't go down.
Right. I don't know if I see one. Do you see a contingency plan here?
That's what's got me worried. I mean, we like the young guys, and we're all for going with the young guys, but it's still a lot of unknown with the young guys. And
now,
and if
let me ask
things
you
go
this.
south.
Let me ask you this, Glenn. Do you think people talk about this all the time? Do you think the Ravens are still really out there trying to wheel and deal for DK Metcalf?
I thought that they would have been close and maybe easier to try and get a guy like Terry McLaurin, and then I see he just got extended, and that's not happening.
That's the thing, is that contract is. I mean, the Ravens don't want to.
I don't
want to do it.
Yeah, I don't think they go after a big name guy. I think they've made it clear that their idea is to pay tight end. Pay a great tight end, who I think was 7th in the league last year, or 9th in the league in receiving. So it's not like. It doesn't matter to me if it's a tight end or a wide receiver. It's a pass catcher in the end, and I think they're saying let's pay the lesser expensive position. That way we can use more money elsewhere and build a stronger overall roster that way. So that's their philosophy. So I don't think they're going to trade away Hollywood to bring in another guy who needs to have the monster contract to keep him happy. So I think if they do trade for a guy, it's not going to be a guy that's maybe the sexiest or splashiest of trades, but it's a solid veteran who can fill a role that they need. If that role is possession receiver, jump ball, red zone threat, then maybe you get a guy who's not a Hall of Famer, not going to any Pro Bowls, but he can do what needs to be done in those scenarios.
Yeah, 100%. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the Ravens do here, guys. Let us know what your thoughts are. Couple things. Do they go out and get a veteran? Mm-hmm. Do they keep 5? Do they keep 6? What's your depth chart?
Oh, hold on. Did I give my 6th?
Oh, no, you didn't give your 5th, right? 5th.
5th. I think Makai Polk steals it. I think he comes in, he steals it. And look, I like guys that make plays, and I think Coach does too, and it sounds like he's been making plays.
Wow, guys. All right, so Glenn says Polk. I say Victor. Let us know what your thoughts are. Which one do you think will end up being on the team? And we'll talk to you guys soon.